Mentally strong people don't intimidate everyone, only the minds that are still fighting themselves. And if you've ever been punished for being calm, consistent, or honest, you know that pain. By the end, you'll understand why your strength triggers them and how to stay solid without turning cold. Have you ever walked into a room feeling peaceful and somehow people started acting weird, defensive, or small around you? Here's what this video is really about. Not how to win, not how to dominate, not how to be feared. It's about a quiet psychological truth. Your stability becomes a mirror, and not everyone likes what they see. Sometimes you improve your life and people clap, and sometimes they don't. You start saying no without guilt. You stop explaining yourself too much. You don't panic when someone disapproves. You don't beg to be understood. And suddenly, a colleague becomes sharp. A friend becomes distant. Family becomes oddly critical. You didn't attack them. You didn't change your tone. You just changed your center. In the next few minutes, we're going to map this out in a simple way. First, we'll break down what mentally strong actually means, because it's not arrogance and it's not being emotionless. Second, we'll expose the pattern that makes some people react, the ego's fear of being exposed. Third, we'll walk through real-life scenes, work, family, friend circles, where this shows up in subtle, painful ways. And finally, you'll get an ethical, practical framework. 3 to 5 rules to protect your peace without becoming harsh, performative, or lonely. Because here's the trap most strong people fall into. They think, I must be doing something wrong. So, they shrink. They soften the truth. They perform harmlessness to keep others comfortable. Or they swing the other way, becoming cold and cutting because they're tired of being misunderstood. But mental strength isn't about shrinking, and it isn't about violence. It's about staying human without handing your steering wheel to other people's insecurities. You'll learn how to recognize the difference between someone who's simply having a bad day and someone who feels threatened by your emotional freedom. Because those are not the same thing. And if you keep treating them the same, you'll either abandon yourself or you'll start building walls where you needed boundaries. So if you've been feeling this strange pressure, like your growth is making people uncomfortable, good. That discomfort is information, not because you're better than them, but because your presence is triggering a conflict inside them that has nothing to do with you. And once you see how this works, you'll stop taking it personally. You'll stop over-explaining. You'll stop shrinking. You'll stop arguing with people who aren't even arguing with your words. They're arguing with what your existence suggests, because the real problem isn't what you think. Here's the concept in one simple sentence. When you become mentally strong, you stop feeding people's ego games, and that feels like betrayal to those who need those games to feel safe. Let's use a metaphor. Imagine a room full of people wearing masks. Some masks are obvious. Confidence, humor, toughness. Some masks are quiet. Kindness used as a shield. People-pleasing used as survival. Now, imagine someone walks into that room without a mask. Not loud. Not trying to impress. Just present. That single person becomes a mirror. And mirrors don't insult you. They only reveal what's already there. This is the first reveal. A weak mind isn't stupid. A weak mind is a mind that can't tolerate inner tension, so it tries to control the outside world instead. So when you show up calm, clear, self-respecting, you accidentally create tension in them, because your existence asks a question they don't want to answer. Why am I still performing? Why am I still chasing approval? Why am I still reactive? And instead of facing that discomfort, many people do something easier. They project. In Jung's view, we all have a shadow, the parts of us we don't want to admit, so we push them into the dark. Not just bad parts, but also strengths we're afraid to own. Courage, honesty, independence. When someone else carries what we bury, it can irritate us. Not because they're wrong, because they're reminding us. That's why the mentally strong often get labeled in strange ways. You get called cold when you're simply not begging. You get called arrogant when you're simply not shrinking. You get called selfish when you finally set a normal boundary. And the craziest part, you can be gentle, polite, and helpful, and still trigger people, Because what threatens them isn't your behavior, it's your freedom. You become calmer, clearer, more focused. And certain people start acting strangely around you. They interrupt more. They question your tone. They joke about you being serious. They suddenly need to humble you. You didn't announce transformation. You just stopped leaking energy. Reason. In many environments, especially work, people don't compete with skill. They compete with position. And when you become mentally strong, you stop playing hidden games like seeking permission to exist, apologizing for your needs, joining gossip to prove you belong, overworking to earn love. So the social system notices something. They can't read you the way they used to. Weak minds often rely on predictability, not the healthy kind, like trust, the unhealthy kind, like control. When you're emotionally reactive, people can guide you. When you're consistent, people must face themselves. That's why your calm can feel like a threat. Someone in an office used to be easy, always helpful, always available, always explaining. If a message came late at night, they replied. If someone criticized them publicly, they smiled and swallowed it. Then something changed. They started doing their work and leaving on time. They stopped rushing to defend themselves. They asked one simple question when blame appeared. What's the real problem we're solving? Not aggressive, just clear. At first, it looked like maturity, but then small reactions began. A coworker began making little comments. Wow, you're so confident lately. A manager started reading attitude into normal boundaries. Meetings got tense in a strange way, like the room wanted them to shrink back into their old role. And here's the painful moment nobody talks about. They weren't being punished for being bad. They were being punished for no longer being useful to someone's ego. Because when you stop overgiving, the takers feel abandoned. When you stop over-explaining, the control seekers feel disrespected. When you stop panicking, the anxious feel judged. But you didn't judge them. You just stopped joining the emotional mess. So what do you do when your strength triggers backlash, and you still have to work with these people every day? Because the wrong response will either make you a target or make you lose yourself. And most people choose the wrong one. You grow emotionally, and your personal relationships start changing, not always loudly. Sometimes it's small. People stop calling as much. Someone becomes passive-aggressive when you're doing well. Family members worry in a way that feels like control. Friends tease your growth like it's a phase. You feel the message beneath the message. Don't become someone we can't manage. Reason. In close relationships, people unconsciously build roles. The responsible one, the funny one, the fixer, the quiet one, the one who always forgives. These roles create comfort because nobody has to renegotiate the relationship. But mental strength forces renegotiation because you stop saying yes to what hurts. You stop laughing at what disrespects you. You stop betraying your own needs just to keep the peace. And that's when weak minds panic, not because they hate you, but because they fear what your growth means. If you change, will I have to change too? And instead of facing that fear, they sometimes try to pull you back with guilt, sarcasm, criticism disguised as honesty, emotional distance, as punishment. Someone starts working on themselves quietly. They sleep better. They speak slower. They stop arguing to win. They stop reacting to every comment. At home, they're calmer, but the house becomes louder. A family member keeps testing them with small triggers, little jabs, old stories, jokes that aren't jokes. And for once, the person doesn't explode and doesn't beg. They say softly, I don't want to talk like that. No drama, no lecture. But something shifts. The family member gets angry, not at the boundary, but at what the boundary exposes. That their old way of relating is not normal. That disrespect was being tolerated, not deserved. That emotional chaos was being enabled, not required. So the family member escalates. Who do you think you are? You've changed. You're acting superior. But the person isn't acting superior. They've just stopped negotiating with disrespect. And this is where mentally strong people get confused. They think, maybe I am being harsh. Maybe I should go back. Because they love these people. They don't want conflict. They want peace. But peace that requires self-abandonment is not peace. It's slow erosion. So how do you stay loving without becoming a doormat? And how do you stay firm without becoming cold? Because the real test of mental strength isn't on good days. It's when your boundaries make someone else uncomfortable, and you don't run back to rescue their feelings. At your strongest moments, when you finally feel clear, people may respond with distance, distortion, or blame. And the temptation is powerful. Either you chase them to prove you're still good, or you cut everyone off and call it peace. Reason. Here's the final reveal. Weak minds are not scared of your power. They're scared of what your power forces them to admit about themselves. Your clarity confronts their confusion. Your boundaries confront their entitlement. Your calm confronts their chaos. And your refusal to play along creates a crisis. They can no longer pretend the problem is only the world, because you're living proof that another way exists. Back in that workplace, the same person faces a moment. A coworker tries to provoke them in a meeting. Subtle pressure, a slight insult, a baited question meant to make them defensive. Old version: panic, explain, overwork, prove. New version: breathe, pause, speak once. They say, I hear your concern. If there's a real issue, let's define it. If not, I'm moving forward. Short, clean, human. The room goes quiet. Not because they won, because they didn't perform. After the meeting, they don't gossip, they don't post about it. They go back to their work. Later that evening, alone, they feel the old fear. What if people don't like me anymore? And this is the true battlefield, not the office, not the family, the inner world. They sit with the discomfort and realize, I don't need to be liked to be safe. I need to be honest, to be whole. That's mental strength, not dominance, integrity. Now, here are 3 to 5 practical takeaways you can use immediately. Ethical, grounded, real. Observe more, explain less. If someone is committed to misunderstanding you, explanations feed the game. Say what's true once, then let actions speak. Set boundaries without anger. Calm is not weakness. Calm is clarity. You don't need rage to be serious. I'm not available for that is enough. Don't argue with projections. When someone calls you cold for being stable, they're revealing their dependence on emotional control. You can't logic someone out of a mirror they refuse to look into. Pick your circle by nervous system safety. Choose people who feel safer when you grow, not people who need you small to feel big. Consistency beats intensity. You don't need dramatic reinvention. Quiet, repeated integrity changes everything. And here's the closing loop. If your strength scares someone, it doesn't mean you should hide. It means you've reached a level where your life is no longer a comfortable excuse for their avoidance. Stay kind, stay clear, stay grounded. Not to prove anything, but because you're building a self you can live with. If this helped you name what you've been feeling, you'll probably like the next videos too. So consider subscribing. No pressure, just an open door. And remember, the goal isn't to be feared. It's to be so steady that chaos can't rent space inside you.